Okay. I'd like to call the meeting for our October Planning Commission, and we'll start with a roll call. Well, I think we're all here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're all here.
No, you got, you gotta get a roll call. You gotta get a,
Can I see your ID?
We're good. Petra, we're all here. So we did the roll call.
All right, got you.
We're moving right along. This will be a short meeting. And now I'd like to look at the approval of the minutes for July 3rd. Do I have a motion for approval?
so moved.
And second?
Second.
And what questions, comments do we have on those July minutes?
None.
None.
No.
Oh, okay. Hey,
I made it past mustard.
we're going for a record today, okay? We're on pace here.
Now if we can just be done in 20
So all
minutes.
those are for approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Public comments. Anyone have any comments on the topics that are on our agenda today? Of course, you'll get a second chance later. Thank you. Okay. Next on our agenda is a executive session, which I have been told will be short. So do I have a motion for us to go into executive session?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay.
You don't need me.
Okay, we're all back? Okay.
Yes, bye-bye.
Do I have a motion to come out of the executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Good. And during our session, no actions were taken and no voting occurred. So moving right along, old business, and John, will you give us a update on Kiawah Next, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to provide you with a status update of Kiawah Next, the update of our comprehensive plan. This has continued to be an evolved process. Just to note where we are, as you all recall at our last meeting, I shared that we have established a subcommittee of plan commissioners to work as a work group to advance that document as much as we can before we provide it back to this full body. We are nearing that date. I sent to you guys invitation request for October 29th. Based on your availability, and I know that we had a range of availability, that's kind of how we landed on the 2 p.m. start. That 2 p.m. gives us enough time to discuss, not too late into the evening, but enough time to at least discuss the document. So October 29th will be the date that we reconvene as a full group to give you guys an opportunity to have some discussion on the revised document. We'll provide that document to you at least 2 weeks before, so we're working on making some final sort of minor editorial changes from that work group. Once we share that with you guys, we'll prepare for that 29th date. Hats off and thank you to Ms. Hennessy, Dr. Curran, Mr. Iwan for the work that they've done through this process of assisting staff to get us to this point. And so, like I said, at the 29th date, we'll ask that you treat it as a full new document. So I know there was questions previously of not having that red line, but just treat this as a new document, and we'll go from there to advance this document to hopefully have this presented subsequently and then approved target goal before the end of this year. And so if there are any questions about that timeline process, that's really it though.
John, what do you expect the document to be?
The document is essentially the first draft of the completed document of the comprehensive plan.
First draft?
A final draft of what all of the
Final draft, okay.
all of the elements have been reviewed by the subcommittee from the beginning of the document through the end. And so at this time, we will represent that back to the full commission and allow the commission to discuss it accordingly.
And what do you expect the outcome to be from that meeting?
From that meeting, I would hypothetically or in good faith say that this commission supports that document. A lot of work has been into it. If there's substantive changes, I mean, that's the direction of the planning commission, but I think the work group has provided enough work to move it forward on to council, in my opinion. And so I think just having the ability to have the rest of you guys' eyes as planning commission members, having an opportunity for, before sort of we publicize it even more in a general state to the public, to have an opportunity to review that.
Wait a minute, you say you're going to council with this after or before going to the public?
So the document will be published as part of that workshop, just to let you know that because it's a public meeting, so that would be published. So the community would be able to see that document for the 29th meeting. Beyond that, we haven't set any public hearing dates. We haven't scheduled anything beyond that date because from staff's perspective, I want the planning commission comfortable with this document before we make any of those steps.
Well, why would it go, when you say it goes to the public, yes, why would it go to council?
Council has the final approving authority.
Not until after we submit it to them.
Yeah, that's to say, I have not scheduled any of those dates to the,
So well, why would it go to council before a public hearing that we're going to hold?
Well, that's what it's always been.
so council holds the structure that we've done, council has always held the public hearing.
Only because we basically voided the right to hold a public hearing ourselves and let it go to council. It could go to either one.
Well, council will have the authority and the right to make any changes to the document.
Without
So
getting public comment?
So let me just pause here just to correct. Ms. Capelli is correct. The Planning Commission or Town Council has the ability to host a public hearing. For the Town of Kiawah Planning Department, our standard of practice since I've been a part of the town has been that the public hearing element has been with the Town Council. That doesn't prevent the Planning Commission, if desired, for us to hold a second public hearing before it reaches council. We can schedule that if that's the desire of the commission. That's an opportunity, but the public hearing before it gets approved, it would go through Town Council, then the appropriate readings, the first and second reading through Town Council as standard.
The public hearing that we would presumably hold is not necessarily to get information for approval. It's information to get comments from the community as to whether they support or have objection to any of the issues that are in there, and give us food for thought to go back and possibly amend some of the information that's already contained there.
Correct.
Where is that going to happen?
So subject to the workshop on the 29th, I think based on staff's read of the room, if you will, or direction of the Planning Commission, if you guys are comfortable with that document, we can schedule a public session with your formal recommendation of the document. So this is just a workshop. This is not your formal recommendation. Once you make that formal recommendation, we can schedule that public concession at that time.
So, John, so what you're saying is that we're going to have this workshop. The entire planning commission will have the document in advance and be able to review it. We'll be able to discuss it. Then at that point in time, Andy, if the council or if the commission thinks that it would be of benefit to have a public hearing, we could vote on it at that point in time as to whether we wanted a public hearing or not. But, let's wait till that happens
Yeah, let's
before.
take the steps.
Yeah.
And, regardless of practice since John's been here, every one of them, because you'd never have taken a full one through when John was here, every one of them before that, we gave the basically draft, not anything that we approved, but a draft out to the public with the language that we were comfortable
Okay,
with.
and we're leaving that option open. If the full planning commission feels that it would be, or
Yeah,
a
so
majority of the planning commission feels it would be appropriate, we could do that.
I think
But that would not be a
Mr.
public-
Capelli is
That would not
sharing
be a
a.
public hearing, that would be for comments.
Yes, we could.
So
could do
there's
that.
two different distinguished.
So
What I
we
hear.
do have that option, is what I'm asking.
What I hear Mr.
That's not what John
Capelli
said.
is requesting is not a public hearing. It's just an opportunity for the public to have an opportunity to review the document. That if I'm misquoting you, then correct me, but, so we can build that into the process.
Okay.
What do you mean we
And
can?
John, you said
We
this is,
should.
you said the workshop on the 29th is going to be open to the public, right?
Correct.
So if 150 people show up and start commenting, I think we probably would want to have a document. If we don't get a lot of feedback from the public of concerns, then it may not be necessary.
They're going to see the document because
And
it's
they'll
going to
see
be
the document.
published before the workshop
Yep.
because
Right.
it's a public meeting. So the community will have the document. And then, after we all, if we
I think
agree,
it's,
then we can do
I
a
think
public
it's,
hearing.
I think it's
You're
important for the
ignoring the
community to
law.
bless it, and so we will make it available ensure that the community participates in that.
You're
Okay.
ignoring the comprehensive plan law. The law requires that you seek comments from the public before you go out for a public hearing.
And we
we
have
will.
that built into
Gotten
the.
public
We have
for a
not gotten
year.
comments if you're talking about giving away candy.
No. Okay.
That was not and we all agreed with that.
That was not good.
Okay, we're going to move right along, but before we get off that subject, I do want to point out that Larry, Joanne, and Ron have done excellent work behind the scenes, a number of meetings, and we all appreciate what each of you have done. New business, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, you see under new business is a proposed text amendment. What I would do is highlight the intent and purpose of this proposed zoning text amendment. And this comes from our Division 6 under nonconformities and vested rights. The purpose and intent is to essentially allow for nonconforming structures to have standards and nonconformities. These would include lots and structures. And so the proposed amendments essentially, in summary, provide the opportunity for a a property to ensure that they are able to rebuild given a significant casualty, and that's including, not limited to, an act of God, natural forces, fire explosion. And I want to point your attention to Section 2 of that, Section D, which further incorporates standards regarding our building height requirements. And so that essentially clarifies in more detail that the property owner would be able to build back given the event that occurred. The next component to that is on page 3 of 6 of that particular section under Section 12-193, non-conforming uses. What's also being added to this particular section of the ordinance under abandonment and discontinuance, what's being acknowledged by staff is sort of a 180 consecutive day period immediately after the event of a casualty, and then an 18-month requirement based on when that applicant would need to submit for permits to ensure due diligence or persistence through the development process. This would be applied to all properties across the island. And so that concludes sort of the summary of what's being presented. If there's any sort of follow-up questions, our legal counsel can also provide any additional thoughts.
I have a quick question for Matt. Just the difference between discontinued and abandoned. Is there a legal, I mean, I don't have a problem with either one. It was discontinued, but for some reason it was proactively changed to abandoned. Is that significant in any way?
I don't think so.
So why was it changed?
Which paragraph are you?
I'm on paragraph 3,
A and B.
abandonment. When a non-conforming use, it used to say is discontinued for a consecutive period, now says it's abandoned for a consecutive period.
For staff perspective, I think it just clarifies, the word discontinued, I think, could be a little bit more opening of the use of it. But abandoned says that use is no longer being used. I think it's a wordplay, but I leave it to the.
I just wondered if there was some legal,
So,
I think that was a statute that was used in a lot of neighboring jurisdictions, and we thought it made more sense after talking with John.
okay, yeah, because, I mean, when we did the rezoning, we relied on this as one of the reasons being non-conforming for an existing structure is a non-issue because they can rebuild. So this is just clarifying that they can rebuild, so it should be fine.
you want to keep the language consistent in 3B-2. You start that with discontinuance. You want to change that to abandonment?
Oh,
Where are you,
catch.
Mr.?
3B,
2.
Section 2. You go back to using the word discontinuance.
I'd go the other way. I'd use abandon in both.
That's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying, yeah.
That is a good recommendation for town council when it goes to them.
Good.
Just to be consistent. I mean, we don't foresee this stuff happening, but stuff happens.
Okay.
Okay.
So before we go to vote, do the commissioners have any other questions, comments of this, of legal or of John? And if not,
I move that we approve the changes.
okay, I have a motion, I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
You have discussion,
Technically, now you say, is there discussion?
And any other discussion?
No, now we can vote.
If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is passed, okay. John, discussion item, if you want to give us an update on what I thought was an excellent meeting we had the other day on stormwater runoff.
Yes. So I just wanted to highlight during this particular, or let's frame this discussion, if you will, based on Monday's stormwater management workshop. I shared with you just a simple, quick document. What I wanted to do is recapture what I thought I've heard and also provide the Planning Commission just where we are. There are a lot of what I would call moving parts to resiliency and stormwater management. None of them have happened overnight, and there are also a number of initiatives, actions, recommendations that have already been started, in the process of being started. And so what I wanted to do is highlight a few of those for you, and then just allow for some just dialogue between commissioners to give some more direction or guidance. As part of this, staff is going to just provide a couple of recommendations from Monday as far as next steps. What I do think is important to, we carved out some time on Monday to kind of hear from experts, but I do think it's important to carve out some time for you guys to kind of think of what you heard, and then kind of engage with each other and kind of visualize what's most important for Kiawah as a community. And so one of the key takeaways that we definitely heard was that there needed to be a greater education or awareness to resiliency and stormwater management, and the nuance of permitting and just what property owners can do with their property independent of any proposed recommendations or regulation changes. And so I wanted to just highlight a couple things that were already in place. These are just things that are, what I would say, have been somewhat significantly advanced, or at least been in the process of being advanced. And there are a number of other things, of course, in our normal rhythm, like our communications through our communications department and our e-blast, what the community association pushed out to the residents and property owners on the island. But if you are aware, prior to the workshop, or really at the beginning of this year, 2024, the Comprehensive Marsh Management Work Group Subcommittee presented to council at the time what we would have presented as an incentive package or program that would be considered regarding pervious and impervious surfaces. That was modeled after an independent sort of grassroots effort that occurred in the Ocean Woods community. And so what we're calling that is sort of a neighborhood level regime sort of campaign for pervious elements. There's no required pervious element requirement from a regulatory change today. We all know that in July that you guys recommended approval for that particular ordinance. Town council will make a decision on what they want to do with that particular ordinance now that the stormwater application workshop has happened. But what we want to do from a staff's perspective is continue to engage the regimes and neighborhood levels to ensure that they have the right knowledge and understanding that they can communicate as a neighborhood, as a regime, if they wanted to pursue pervious elements in their neighborhood, that they have the easiest way to do that. And Gene has been instrumental in working with his neighborhood as sort of what I would say catalyst, if you will. But we want to just continue encouraging the community. So in your dialogues with others, if you know the story of what occurred at the Ocean Woods neighborhood, if you can take that model and spread it across the island, that's one of the things that helps bring awareness. The second is a podcast series. Our podcast series on our YouTube channel has become very popular. And so Neil, our communications department, has been working on interviews for our next sort of series, which will talk about pervious elements. I'm calling this one the This Whole House episodes. So we will actually try to meet on site with the contractor and show what pervious elements kind of look like. And so he's working through those interviews now. We don't have a timetable yet, but we're meeting with homeowners. We've had a number of testimonies from homeowners and what they've done on their actual properties, particularly before a significant rain, and they've seen significant improvements. And so we want to be able to just continue to communicate that message. Also, not just regarding impervious surfaces, but we've heard a number of conversations or thoughts and recommendations around what should occur at the marsh level or on the marsh north side of the island. As you know, the Marsh Management Committee also this year evaluated the use pattern of what occurs at the Kiawah River Bridge. This is all built into the resiliency, so I'm just going down the list of everything. But signage will be in process very soon to be installed at the Kiawah River Bridge to assist in us educating the community on best practices on how do you enter and not disturb the marsh, which is a critical component to the resiliency. One thing that was also mentioned on Monday was that the flood mitigation sea level rise report that was done in 2018, that particular report produced over maybe 130 actions or recommendations that the community consider. One of the things that I myself worked with Lucas when he was a part of Kika's organization is how do we track those recommendations and ensure that the entities and organizations are continuing to evaluate and make progress on those. We're working on updating that document. Kika has done a number of infrastructure projects that have been called out in that particular document. There's been a number of things that take not just 1 month, but it might take 3 years to accomplish, some of the monitoring things. And so what we want to do is just capture, memorialize where we are with those 130-odd recommendations and be able to filter through and begin to prioritize in the next 6 months, 18 months, et cetera, what makes sense, things that are attainable for us to achieve. The next thing that I want to highlight are just this one. Well, before I go to the actual amendments here, the other thing was discussing what happens on pond edges. Kika made, I think, a few comments during their session on how trimming and the health of the ponds. One of the things that staff is now evaluating as far as zoning text changes is what can be done on the pond edges for buffering, on the marsh side for buffering. So we're going to be looking at our buffering requirements and pond edges and evaluating that, and then hopefully having discussion at the Planning Commission level or just community level to see what recommendations would come forth. This is all incorporated in recommendations out of our marsh management plan, and so we're just moving along, like I said, a number of things that have occurred in our marsh management plan. If you look on that sheet, one of the things I already mentioned, the pervious paving requirements, that's already sort of in process. The second was stormwater management, actual regulatory changes. The first of those stormwater regulatory changes was when we introduced essentially an application process of now having a property owner, when they come to develop their property, that they would be required to submit some level of a stormwater management plan. And that application is just modeled after similar communities are doing this. What was discussed on Monday is the supplementary standards. I think when we shared in June or July, that discussion with the Planning Commission, the supplementary standards were things that we could incorporate from a municipality standpoint. And so what I want to gauge today, I know I've been saying there's going to be discussion, I'm kind of going a little long here, but I wanted to at least get your opinions and thoughts on some of those best management practices that we did mention, on-site retention, grading requirements, that would be the next level of detail that staff prepares a recommendation for. And not everything necessarily could be in ordinance form. Some things might just be educating more intently the practices in the permitting process. And so we just want to have that. The last thing that I'll mention is that, well, two things. As part of the stormwater next stages, one of the things that staff will be recommending is third-party review to bring someone on permanently, if you will, for continuing services for stormwater review. That requires a little bit more legwork in the review process of our permitting patterns, our permitting standards process. And so we want to just have that continuing services agreement. So that would be something not necessarily comes directly to the Planning Commission, but something town council would approve. But that, from a staff recommendation standpoint, that's the next goal of from the department, to have someone in this continuing services engineering firm be responsible and partner with the town to review development projects from a stormwater standpoint. On the last thing, you'll see bulkheads, berms, retaining walls, living shorelines. We've had, not significant, but inside our marsh management plan, it's another recommendation for us to consider bulkheads and how do we regulate or at least administer the construction of those. Anything that is below the critical line, marsh area, that's permitted by DHEC. And so we don't have any technical influence on, or specific influence on what can and can't be permitted. But anything on the uplands, we do have jurisdiction. To date, just give you a process sort of information standpoint. We are notified from DHEC or DES when someone does apply for a dock, when someone does apply for a bulkhead. The process now for us to review that, do we have any town sort of codes or regulations that would impede that? We do have our dock key location ordinance, which essentially maps out where docks can be located, the types of docks across the island. So when we do see a dock that is wanting to be permitted and it's not a part of our key location, as staff, we contact DES, DHEC, OCRM and say, hey, this is not an approved key dock location. Could you have that property owner contact us to ensure that they are consistent with our zoning code? We've been pretty good in partnering with the state with that particular process, and they've, I would say, have well respected our positions in being able to respond accordingly based on our zoning code. So the next stage is we want to not necessarily have a regulation, but some type of policy of what should a property owner do. Should they build a bulkhead? Should they have a living shoreline? And we need to really study to see every situation is different. Some may require a hard structure based on the location and the natural environment. But we, when I say we, the Marsh Management Subcommittee will be meeting with Bill Marner, McSweeney Engineers on next week. And that particular group will just kind of begin that conversation of understanding what's happening out on Kiawah. This particular firm has done a number of projects on Kiawah, and they have been very wanting to be involved in the process of how do we ensure that we're getting the best product in the best situations across the island. I'm gonna stop and then give you guys some just opportunity to talk about Monday, giving your thoughts, and so that staff can capture what do you guys have or think that are most pressing priorities.
John, the education part, right? In my experience with our community doing the permeable driveway project, we need to educate the public, obviously, but the regimes and HOAs are a big issue as well, okay? Currently, where I live, we're allowed asphalt, salt void concrete, or one type of paver, okay? There's no latitude for permeable concrete, permeable asphalt, all these other options that are out there. And it's a real barrier to get some of these projects going, to get people to change and adapt to what we want to do at the town level. So how could we get the HOAs and regimes to be on the same song sheet as the rest of us? Is it through Kika or?
I mean, I don't think it's one strategy per se. I mean, I think it's, number one, identifying the product type that works for the neighborhood, that it works for the regime. And we don't have all of the information. That can only come from the private sector of knowing the cost of the product types, the benefit of the product types. I mean, we've worked with the Conservancy to kind of understand some infiltration rates and that type of thing. But I think if the question is how do we get,
It's how to get the regimes to approve those product types that the town wants us to use. The permeable asphalt, permeable concrete, they're simply not on the approved list of some of the regimes right now for HOAs.
Isn't that up to the regime people to contact your
yes.
board and say, hey, guys, let's make a change?
It should be, there's reluctance, I'll tell you.
I
It's
guess
an
it's
education
understanding
thing.
what the reluctance is. Is it cost? Is it
Well,
aesthetics? Is
What I've
it,
heard from ours is they're only allowed 3 choices, right? So until the town makes a change, we don't want to remove one of the existing choices from the menu.
Can't you just add choices?
Our regime has said we're only allowed 3: asphalt, salt void concrete, or one type of paver.
You need a new board.
Don't go there.
No, I was going to say, sometimes with the regimes, it's just a matter of people being there too long, and it's sort of, this is the way we've always done it, and it can be challenging.
Sure.
To get
20 years.
people.
John, I think the same thing comes out of the discussion with bulkheads. There could be a number of options, and until an option is selected, that presumably would not only solve the problem with the marsh, but also with the private property areas that have incursion or excessive overflow from storms or whatever, with one solution rather than two or three, or maybe even bulkheading the whole island, there might be better solutions out there. How are we going to get there?
So the thought pattern today is that we know the range of options, right? Whether there's some type of soft material versus a hard engineered material. And it's really just, if we can encourage a property owner to evaluate not just their single property, but look at the effects of that entire adjacency and maybe that area, we can make a recommendation for this area would do better, or these areas. In our marsh management plan, it identifies areas that are quickly eroding or that would need to be, that have been truly stressed. And so those areas may require a different strategy. And I think we don't have an answer that says this is going to be applied across the island, but I think you can study that particular area, that particular sector. Maybe it's just one of the fingers in the preserve that you're looking at to say this is the best strategy for this area versus something in the north center part of the island. So it's not a one size fit all. It's just really, I think, working with each area is to determine what's the best strategy for that area.
The overall strategy. I mean, in my example, you might find that some strategy at the river is more effective than bulkheads on property.
Yeah, I mean, there are instances where a bulkhead is needed. I'm not, like, there are instances where.
I'm talking about bulkheads on the river at all. Talking about breakwaters or some sort of access to, I'm sorry, not access, but some sort of an action that would somehow still the activity at the water line rather than have it come through to affect the property, which then affects the marsh before it gets to the property.
John, I have a couple questions for Monday. The first one, and I was a little confused on this. These 130 items, I mean, I assume this is what they were categorized under BMP, best management practices, right? Are they the majority of those?
So those 130 are spread across what I call the different sectors of resiliency. So
Again,
some
I didn't hear you,
different
sorry.
sectors of resiliency. So some of them might just be targeted towards just identifying what should be done regarding the marsh. Others are targeted to roads and infrastructure. So they're spread across, not just.
So the reason I asked, because one of the things that came up in the meeting was, should we propagate that 130 list and use it as a roadmap to try to pick things out? Then I assume the things we would pick out would then be candidates to be codifying in some of our, okay, and so that process, the planning department's going to oversee that process and work us through that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second question I have is, there were two key areas that I took away from. One is stormwater management, the volume of water from storms, and the other is quality of the water. Do we have are we looking at the quality issue? I thought that Lee did a fantastic job in his presentation and certainly made me more aware of how the cycle, works. But do we have any focus on the quality aspect of the water?
That's what we're here to listen to your recommendations. I mean, pervious elements, that helps, right? Because you're looking at improving the system. Buffer required, like looking at what's planted on the buffer or things that enters before it enters the master drainage. So that's part of that on-site retention. Those are all concepts and practices that we can explore, whether they are codified in the zoning code or listed as a supplemental standard. That's what we want to.
Okay, so just short answer is that yes, we'll be looking at the quality as well as, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I thought you knew that already, that we would be looking to both.
Yeah, it may be just monitoring what Tika's doing and concluding that
I don't know
that's-
how, I just wanted, because there are two things that came to me from that meeting, volume management and quantity, and quality of the
And
water.
I think what you heard is they're already doing it. The question is, is it sufficient?
Yeah.
Any
I
other-
guess the only thing we've talked about a lot of different topics now, and I'm just, now we're talking about bulkheads, and I just kind of wonder whether we should concentrate on a few areas, really push those. Not saying that we shouldn't do the other things, but I think since it is a new project,
So just from a process standpoint, you guys won't see anything related to bulkheads in the near future. That's going to be working with that subcommittee of the marsh management work group. And once they kind of massage that and provide some more details, then potentially it'll get to planning commission. But that won't be anything immediately that the planning
well,
commission will be
and
working on.
like I said, I just
Yeah.
think that we would do a better job if we really just stick with the pervious versus impervious and see if we can make an impact in one area to start with, rather than spread our efforts out.
And I
over-
can forward that to council and say, hey, that's the desire to let's hit pervious surfaces as hard as we can and
Absolutely.
No mission creep.
Yeah.
Fruit.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it's all great stuff to discuss, but we need to start the process with a focus on one area.
Is there a focus area that you guys want to share right now?
I think we should, again, the pervious versus impervious and trying to make the biggest impact. I mean, that discussion and Lee's, showed us the data, 18%. Obviously, that number is probably creeping up, not down. And I think we need to focus our impact there to see if we can change the trajectory and maybe even try to lower that percentage.
I would agree with Ron. My question does involve mission creep, though.
We'll be the judge of that.
One of the things that, I think it was Ryan from Kika, who also I thought did an excellent presentation. At the end, he just sort of referred to that one of the biggest flooding risks is tidal, not storm. And he had some ideas, and we didn't really get into it, but perhaps while we focus on what we can do now, there should be a long-term strategy thinking about what can we do about tidal flooding, because most of the flooding comes in from around the back, not from the ocean.
Yep.
And I don't know what we should, but maybe there are some experts who can start thinking, that's a long-term thing.
So what I'll do is that action items, report action items of the flood mitigation sea level rise report, once we have, from a staff level, kind of went through it and rescrubbed it, I'll share that with you guys so you guys can see that it's not just, it considers all of those things. So it specifically thinks about what should be done from a tidal versus inundation versus a rainwater, that type of thing. So there's not a whole lot that we can do because of the elevation of where we are, but
Build up the island.
Well, the point that Charleston, the guy made was that he only focuses on rain, not on tidal, because that's why I think we should stay focused and make sure that we handle things we can actually affect.
So one of the things that you mentioned, though, because we lived in the Midwest, and there was a lot of erosion along Lake Michigan, and an individual homeowner really can't make a substantial impact. You need to attack it by neighborhoods. I mean, you need all the homeowners in this area to cooperate, because if you do one thing, well, that's helping your property, but it's only hurting your neighbors.
Maybe hurting the others.
So I agree. I think that's a great topic, but it is a long-term goal. And like you had said, what's going to work in one area is not going to be the same for a different area, and really, you have to have the whole neighborhood work together, so.
John, did you get the impression, let me put it this way. I got the impression when Russell suggested that he work with you on the 130-plus recommendations, that was to prioritize those?
I think from a council standpoint, yes. I mean, there are a number of things, and we could be doing a whole lot of everything instead of prioritizing. So I think that's what Russell's indication. Yes, I would agree.
I would think that would probably be an important project to do as a unit, you and Russ, whoever you want to take with you. But having done that, then I think you're going to have to reconsider whether it's important enough to follow up on the priorities regardless of how big or how near or long-term they might appear.
Yeah. The biggest thing from a staff perspective that I just want to share that, like I said, this is a continued process, and I don't want to ever feel like we've done this and we've accomplished something without continuing to look 10 years down the road. So it'll be continued iterative process.
I think they referred to the low-hanging fruit. I mean, I served on a flood mitigation strategy committee before and had the similar 100-plus recommendations, and some of them would have immediate impact and be good, clearing rivers and things like that. Others, you could spend millions of dollars, and in a significant rain event, it might affect inches, so it's not worth it to do.
John, in the discussion the other day, when the Charleston County fellow was talking, he talked about Isle of Palms and Folly, and there was never any mention of Seabrook, and I was just wondering, is Seabrook doing anything?
Well, there was a
on this
statistic
topic?
that showed that they were, I think, 18%, and we were 15% for impervious surfaces. But you're right, that's the only part I saw that
Yeah, I
referenced
didn't know
Seabrook.
if they've got any ongoing project on this
Yeah,
issue.
I'm not aware of any significant, like, what I would say stormwater project or initiatives that Seabrook is. We've shared the progress of what we're doing, but I don't think that there's anything intently, directly that Seabrook is doing at this time.
Right.
But I can follow up to make sure.
Any other comments on this before we move on? Well, John, good update, and you put it on our plate, and we'll take care of it. Thank you. Figured you get a kick out of that, didn't you? Correspondence and update.
I'm going to let Patria come up and share just an update on where we are with phase 2 of the landscape work group.
Not quite this.
So October 11th, we have scheduled what we hope is our final landscape work group meeting to finish up our draft of the landscape standards. And then we will be scheduling a meeting with the Landscape and Tree Preservation Board, and they will be reviewing it and taking a vote on it. And after that, and I see that occurring in November, early November, and then it would be coming to the Planning Commission for review, probably in December, and then it would go to Town Council. So we are basically doing a text amendment to the existing tree preservation ordinance, adding in the landscape standards for properties that are not single-family. And I want to thank Ron and Larry for helping with that so far.
Betray, a question. When are we going to get the remediation for the tree that was removed out here?
Well, actually, we are in the process, the town is in the process of considering a number of options for that.
Considering the option is going to be mandatory.
No, it's not, because our current tree preservation does not require mitigation for a diseased or dead tree, and that tree was rotted and had to be removed.
Okay.
Things change, don't they?
Oh, dear.
Text amendment, Mr. Capelli, if that's what you want.
What was that, John?
I said, if you wanted a text amendment, we can bring it back.
Don't tempt him.
I just wanted to provide just some other significant updates based on development projects. As you're aware, was given an update yesterday. MUSC received site plan review conditional approval. So we'll be expecting to see a little bit more action within the near few weeks for that project site. The additional status on Seafields is moving pretty swiftly. They are continuing their vertical construction. The only updates we'll have a follow-up, I shared the updates of the upcoming meetings. So I think that's all of my, I was gonna say October 29th was our next time together as a group. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
What about the Endell? You know anything about that?
So with Endell West, we have reached out to the property owners and just getting a status update of where they are. And what's been shared with us is they're working on transitioning to a new engineering firm to work with them. But we still think it's still some internal cost evaluations for permitting and construction. But we have not gotten any indication of a timeline
But they haven't gone back to county council yet?
No, so
Or county
they've gotten approval for the plan development, but no drawings or anything for construction for vertical or even horizontal have been approved yet.
Where is that? That's in the county?
That's in the county, so we wouldn't see those plans.
The site plan has been approved?
No site plan has been approved, just the plan development, yeah.
But, okay, I thought that was scheduled to go back in September.
No, that was approved end of last year, I think, sometime.
Site plan?
The plan development which includes a conceptual site plan for
But they were
the,
going to make changes to that. They were supposedly going back in September.
no, those were approved. Whatever changes I think that you're alluding to, those were approved. That's all.
Thank you, John. Any public comments on what you've heard today? Okay, we do thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Commissioner comments. Andy, start with you.
I'll save mine for the December meeting.
Okay. Joanne. Ron.
You know, during the discussion earlier in our meeting, there was a lot about public comments and what we're going to do. Stephanie, Ms. Tillerson, made it pretty clear during one of our subcommittee meetings that at the workshop, we cannot take votes on anything. So that was something that is that true, John?
Take like votes in action, so you aren't voting on any document or changes.
Right. So the workshop is going to be a discussion, but we're not going to be taking any votes, making any plans.
Correct.
Like that.
So
No, we had agreements to changes and stuff. They weren't
No,
votes.
right.
Yeah.
You just
the
can't,
alternatives that we were talking about, going for a public hearing or going,
we can discuss it, but we can't vote on it.
so you don't expect any votes to come out of it or any action to come out of the meeting, other than changes
I
on
think
the part of the workshop?
consensus agreements, but not any formal votes.
I have just very minor. The workshop, the intent is for you guys to have some discussion around it. We can identify some staff changes and make amendments to the document and be ready for a prepared formal recommendation the next time you get together. So there's no need to take any vote of saying, hey, I want to approve this today or disapprove it. Just more so getting a consensus around the document. Once it comes back before you for a recommendation, that's when you would make those technical final votes and approvals.
Would there be, and let me throw a question out, would there be any objection on the part of the commissioners to, if we find that the document is in fair enough shape, except for minor, no substantial concerns that we have, to consider whether or not we should go to the public now, after the meeting on the 29th, or continue to make changes and continue to discuss this thing?
Don't we have a planning commission meeting the first week in November? So we would have it on our agenda to discuss then, and we could vote on a
I'm
public.
talking about the 29th, not that, they need time to prepare it to go out to the public.
Well, it will be out to the public before the meeting on the 29th.
Not for comments. You're talking about a select group that's going to be here.
No, but
No,
they're
it's
going to
gonna
get
be-
it, it's
it's
going to
gonna-
go to
Oh, yeah,
everybody.
yeah, sure, and they gotta read it all too.
Well, I mean.
Be serious, huh?
Okay, well, it's the same as, I'm not going to.
Well, I mean, I think the people that are concerned about it will read it. I mean, I don't know, do you want to mail it to everybody, or?
No, the same thing we did last time was sufficient. Put them up on the wall, let people come in 24/7, or at least where the doors are open, to read it, make their comments, leave them behind, and not be wedded to a fixed meeting or a workshop or something else.
Well, I mean, I think that the town will publish the document on their website and also send out the weekly email.
Right.
So, and those people that are interested will have an adequate chance to read and make public comments.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be multiple meetings.
We just put out a series of documents online, if you will, with Kika, and
And
I
we've
think we
gotten
got
a lot,
49 comments.
which is a lot.
But that's
49 out of 2,000?
But that's true with everything. You know, I mean,
Well.
do you read everything you get? I don't. And it's just like, you know, we've got several thousand people registered to vote on the island. We're usually lucky to get 55% or so. So those that, as Ron said, those that will be interested in reading it will read it. And those that aren't interested will, I think, look at the committees and all the hard work that has been done and say they've done it on our behalf. At the end of the day, it's 11 elements, and a lot of work has gone into it, but, you know, we could beat a dead horse to the point that this thing will go into 2025, and it shouldn't. I mean, it's that close to being done, and once we have that meeting on the 29th, and then the council gets a chance to make any updates, we're almost home. Do you agree, John? Definitely in the red zone. I like that. Okay. John, any comments?
No, I don't have anything specific.
Gene?
No comments.
Larry?
The only comment I'd like to make is that I think most of us don't get an opportunity to have an exposure to some of the really good people we have working here on the island. And I thought the presentations that were made on Monday by the Kika employees and Lee and these guys, I just walked away feeling pretty good about who's handling our issues.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Those folks came prepared. I think they gave us all an education.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think we know more about lowering the ponds now than I've ever. I learned a lot on that subject, so good.
Did you learn how to calculate how much rain is, how many gallons of rain is, with a 3-inch rain over 3 hours? And
Off a roof.
off a roof, yeah.
Motion
Based
to
on
adjourn.
permeable surfaces.
Well, thank you for your comments, and now I ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. We're adjourned.